All right, good morning. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. This is David Paulson. I am an escalation engineer with Microsoft. Been supporting Exchange now for almost 10 years and been with Microsoft for almost that long as well. And I also have Lucas, who's going to be helping present with me here today. Lucas, you're on mute.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lucas. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I'm at Microsoft since 2016. I'm focusing on Exchange and Exchange Online topics. And I'm working closely together with David on the scripts and tools that we provide on the CSS Exchange repository on GitHub. And yeah, today we want to give you a briefly overview about the scripts and the tools that we have and that you can use for troubleshooting the most common issues in Exchange. And this session is part of a two-part session. This is the first one, where we provide you a briefly overview about the scripts that we have and the CSS Exchange repository that we have on GitHub.
And
so let me take control and yeah. So if you like the session and you want to learn more about these topics, I definitely recommend to attend these sessions as well. We have the Ask the Expert session with the Exchange support team, which will start immediately after this call. And then we have the Exchange troubleshooting tools and how to use them session presented by Thomas Meyer. This is the second part of the session. This will also happen today at 1 p.m. Pacific. And last but not least, the Troubleshooting Exchange Server Performance Issue session provided by David Paulson, which will happen tomorrow or start tomorrow at 12 p.m. PST. So let's start with CSS Exchange. What's CSS Exchange? What is the CSS Exchange repository? So the CSS Exchange repository is some kind of follow-up for the TechNet gallery, which was or has been retired and was taken offline in December 2020. And the TechNet gallery was used to share many support scripts that we've provided from CSS. And so, yeah, we decided in 2020 to create the CSS Exchange repository and to migrate the scripts from the TechNet gallery to the CSS Exchange repository. The benefits of the CSS Exchange repository are that this repository is open source, which means security teams can follow up on any code change that we do to our scripts. So they can review the changes, they can review the code. It's also useful for us and also for you to get more insights about the scripts, how we write the scripts, how the scripts work, and to also get these insights. And since we are on GitHub, this allows us to be more flexible and very agile than we've ever been before. On TechNet Gallery, it was pretty hard for us to track issues, for example. And since we are on GitHub, we are doing issue tracking on this repository. So everyone can file an issue with us. Everyone can share feedback with us, and everyone can get these insights from the changes which we make to the many scripts that we have there. And another benefit of having the scripts on GitHub is that we can rely or use Azure pipelines for doing many things like validating the code, performing unit testing, digitally sign the scripts, which means our scripts, every script which will be released has a digital signature, which can be verified to make sure that the script was not changed or has not been changed on the transport, for example, or by some bad actor. And we also maintain a documentation on GitHub. We use GitHub Pages for this. And this makes it easier for you to get a better understanding about the scripts, how they work, which parameters they have. For example, for the health checker, if you experience an issue or don't understand the result of the script output, we have a knowledge base or a docs article regarding every check that we have there. So these are the most important points why we decided to switch to GitHub and to publish our scripts on CSS Exchange. So, and if you have feedback, feel free to drop us an email. You can use this xtoolsfeedback@microsoft.com email address, or you can file an issue on GitHub and share your feedbacks with us. So we're looking forward for your feedback. Yeah, since we are on GitHub, the number of scripts that we have or provide is continuously evolving. So these are the most common scripts based on the numbers of downloads that we have on GitHub. Number one script is the Exchange Health Checker script, the Exchange Setup Assistant, Setup Log Reviewer script, the Log Collector, Source Side Validations, the VSS Tester script, a Troubleshoot Modern Search script, Simple Perf, and Managed Availability Troubleshooter. And during today's session,
and then the ones that we're going to cover are the ones that are highlighted there. Just to kind of briefly overview some of the other popular ones. Exchange Log Collector was something that was actually created initially by me, where we just had issues with collecting data for a very long growing issue with EWS, and we just needed to collect the EWS logs, IIS logs, HBR logs, system logs, and application logs from every single server, and it just got to be very tedious every time the issue occurred. So that's kind of where the script started, and it just evolved from there, and it just became our new way to collect logs, because SDP kind of died. If you're around back in the day when Exchange 2010, 2007, we had SDP packages. They were very reliable, but ever since Exchange 2013 came around, there was just so much data to collect that packages became extremely unreliable. And that's why we went towards creating this script. The source side validation was actually one of those scripts that was on TechNet Gallery, was very well written for Exchange 2010, but as soon as we had modern public folders, so we wanted to add some additional checks, and we just couldn't easily do that. And so we optimized it and ended up creating a different version specifically for modern public folders migrating to Exchange Online to do some additional testing. And VSS Tester is basically just going through and testing the VSS Exchange Writer for backups to verify that your backups are actually working, or the main writer is working, the truncation is going to work, and if it's not, we have the ability to verify that with this simple script, and then also collect additional data that we need to collect in order to troubleshoot those types of issues. Simple Perf was a script that got that replaced EXPerfWiz. EXPerfWiz just needed a overhaul, essentially, because there was a lot of lines of code that was duplicated over the years from 2007 days, 10. So we just made it simplified and ended up adding easy ability to add and remove counters, where EXPerfWiz you weren't able to do that before. And the other big benefit of Simple Perf is we added the ability to run the script on any language OS. Before, it was specific to only English servers because of the name of the counters, and name of the counters are different depending upon the OS language. We added in logic to convert the counters that we want to have and convert it into the natural language of the OS. So that's a big plus for us having that there. And that's just basically a way to automatically start and stop data collector sets for performance data collection. And then the managed availability troubleshooter, which is a way to collect and help analyze anything that's going on with the Exchange servers regarding managed availability, whether it be probes failing, your boxes blue screening, unhealthy health sets, and everything there. Just makes it easier instead of having to follow a 15-step blog on the internet there. So back over to you.
Correct. So, and yeah, today we will focus on these scripts with the errors on the health checker, the setup assistant, and the setup log reviewer. And last but not least, on the troubleshoot modern search script. I think you will see more or learn more about this script in David's session as well. And let's start with the number one script with the health checker. Yeah, the health checker script is the most frequent downloaded script on CSS Exchange. We have multiple thousand downloads per week of the script. And yeah, let's share some history or some insights about the health checker script. The version 1 of the script was initially released in 2015. And initially, the script was named as Exchange Server Performance Health Checker script. And the idea of this initial script in 2015 was to provide a script that can be used to get some configuration recommendations to get out the best performance of your Exchange server. And we then moved the script from the TechNet gallery to GitHub. Initially, it wasn't moved to the CSS Exchange repository, to be honest, but we moved it to GitHub and we started to work on this on the health checker script. We made lots of improvements to the script, and to ensure that the script runs more efficient and even faster. And then in 2018, we started to add security and vulnerability testing into the health checker script. And at this point, the script wasn't in performance testing or performance analyzing script only. It was involved to be a one-stop shop for Exchange best practices, configuration issues, and security as well. So in 2020, we decided to do another optimization run on the script, which means we have refactored large parts of the code to make it even more efficient and reusable. For example, we redesigned the checks and the functions that we have in the script to make sure that each of these checks and functions returns an object that is reusable, so that we don't have to query the same information multiple times. We did that to improve the script performance and to improve, to also improve the logic that we have in the script. And together with this change, we've decided to drop the partial version 2 support, because partial version 2 was required with Exchange 2010. But since Exchange 2010 went out of life, end of life, we decided to drop the support for version 2, and we started to make some more optimizations on the health checker script to work with partial version 3 or higher. This version change was also good for us because we could get rid of old code or old logics which weren't very efficient and which can be easier achieved with partial version 3 or higher. And also one big thing of the rework was that we decided to modularize the whole code of the health checker and of the other support scripts that we have in CSS Exchange as well. The modularization part is very useful for us because it allows us to reuse the code and functions that we have in multiple projects. A good example is the Exchange Extended Protection Management script, which we've recently released with the latest security update for Exchange. We use, for example, functions in this script, which were initially written for the health checker. But since we've modularized the scripts, we are able to reuse the code, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel anytime. And since we have Azure pipelines in place, we can we enforce code formatting checks to make sure that the syntax which we use is adhered in the script. We also use the Azure pipelines to build a script to perform unit testing by simulating inputs and validating that the output which we get from our checks and functions that we have in the script is as expected. We also use Azure pipelines to sign the scripts and to release the scripts, to release and to calculate and release the hash of each script, which we also publish on GitHub, and also to provide the docs documentation that we have on CSS Exchange. And it's definitely recommend to check at least once per month if there is a newer version of the health checker script, because we release in between 1 to 3 new builds per month. And you should at least check for a new version after a cumulative update or security update has been released, because we normally make some changes and adjustments to the script at this time to make sure that it covers the latest security vulnerabilities, for example, and the latest recommendations. You can run the script on a per server base, which means if you run it without providing any parameter, it runs against the local server. And it's also possible to add the server name parameter, and then the script will run or query the information from the server which has been passed to the script. At the moment, we are working on the per server list feature, which will allow you to run the script against multiple servers, which is not yet possible. And this is still on our backlog, and we are focusing on this one because it will be a good improvement for the script, especially if it's used in large organizations with multiple 100 servers. And the script can also be used to generate, for example, a mailbox report, which will show you the total numbers of mailboxes in active and passive databases per server. It can also be used to generate a load balancing reports. With the load balancing report, you can find out how well your client connections are distributed, overall Exchange servers within your organization or within the site. It's very useful to find out if your load balancer is working well. And last but not least, the script has also a function to check for the DC core ratio. And if you fulfill the recommendation, which is 8:1, which means per 1 AD global catalog core, there should be 8 per 8 Exchange server cores, there should be at least 1 AD global catalog core. And this is how the output looks if you run the health checker DC core ratio. It will show you the core ratio for the site in which the script is executed.
In order to actually run that, though, you have to be domain admin as well.
Yeah, you have to be domain admin as well, correct. And if you want to run this check, for example, you should read the documentation which we've published on GitHub as well. It shows you all the prerequisites, the required permission that you need to have, and the parameters as well. We have a documentation for the parameters as well. Yeah, if the script is run without any parameter being used, you will see the following. The script will provide you a screen output, as you can see here on the screenshots. It will generate a log file, which is named as health checker minus server name minus a date timestamp. And this log file contains all the information that we also display on this screen. And during the runtime, the script will also generate a debug log file, which is named health checker minus server name minus debug underscore date time. And if the script runs without any issues, the debug log will automatically delete it after the script runs successfully. You can run the script with the save debug log parameter. And if you use this parameter, we will keep the log, even if the script runs successfully. And the debug log contains lots of information, lots of insights from the checks that we have in the health checker. So if you want to learn more how a check works, for example, and what output is provided by a check, you can dig into the debug log file and to get a better understanding how it works, what was returned by the functions that we have, by the checks that we have. And in case that you need support because you find an issue, then you can share the debug log file with us, and then we can start investigating on this. And last but not least, the script will also write out an XML file. And this XML file contains also the information from the latest run. And you can then run the health checker script with the build HTML server report parameter to generate an HTML report based on the information that we have in the XML file. There are some more useful parameters that you can use for the health checker, and you should definitely check out the documentation that we have. It will give you a briefly overview about the parameters and what they are good for. And here is a little tip. If the health checker finds something, then you should see these AKAMS short links. And if you follow these short links, you will get redirected to the documentation for the particular script check that we have. And the documentation for the check provides information about the expected outcome of a check and the required configuration to be done to make sure that the check is passed successfully. So if you're unsure what an issue that is highlighted by the script is about, then you should check the short link and read the check documentation. Yeah, let's go through some of the general information or information that the health checker script will provide to you. I have a pretty long list here. Let's go to some of these information. We have some general information like the server name, the Exchange version, build number, and the support state of the Exchange version, which is in use to make sure that you run the latest or the N-1 CU on your server. It also will show you the MAPI HTTP status, the MRS proxy state, which is recommended to be disabled if you do not plan to move mailboxes cross-site or cross-forest. AD site information, some information regarding the server maintenance state, if the local and the remote maintenance state of the server, operating system information like the version, the uptime, the current time zone that is set, if dynamic daylight, the dynamic daylight time status, .NET Framework version that is used on your machine, the page file size, and if it fits our recommendation for your sizing. HTTP proxy settings, for example, the power plan, which is pretty important. If it's set to energy saver, for example, this will cause performance issues on your server. Network information, processor information. If you have a hybrid configuration and state, it will also show you some information regarding your hybrid configuration and the connectors which you have used and configured for hybrid mail flow. It will also show and highlight if your Visual C++ redistributable is the current or out of date. NTLM settings, the LM compatibility level key is used for this setting. If credential guard is enabled or not, if credential guard is enabled, this can also cause some performance issues on your server. TLS settings, which are pretty important. Certificate information like lifetime revocation status, for example. And we also show weak server configurations like SMB version 1, Exchange vulnerabilities. if the Exchange Emergency Mitigation Service is configured and running and able to reach our endpoint where we serve new mitigations, if download domains are configured, for example, and last but not least, if extended protection is configured and in place. So in this screenshot, you can see here that we've detected that SMB version 1 is enabled, which is, should not longer be used because it's unsecure. So you better turn off SMB version 1 in this case. And feedback makes the difference. So we heavily rely on your feedback. And with your feedback, we can make more improvements or will make more improvements on the script. The last improvement which we made to the script was regarding the TLS check view, which we have. Let me go one slide back. You see, this is the old view that we have or had. It also shows us the TLS information, but not in that detail as we have them now, because we received some feedback from customers that the output is not very usable. And we also found during our work on the extended protection feature that the output of the current output isn't as good as it should be. One good example is the use strong crypto key, which we check now in the health checker. For example, the use strong crypto key is a little bit tricky because if it's not explicitly set, the default value of this key behaves or belongs on the .NET Framework version, which is targeted by your application. And this can finally lead to different default behaviors if it's not explicitly specified. If you have, for example, an application that targets .NET Framework 4.6 or later, and the key is not set, then we assume that the key is set to 1, which means we use strong cryptography. But if your application targets the .NET Framework version 4.5.2 or earlier, then we assume that this key is set to 0, which means it's disabled, and then we use weak cryptography. And this can finally cause issues in multiple cases, for example, in FreeBSD scenarios. And so we finally decided to change the view and change the output of this check from a true to false, which we had before, like you can see here, to just showing the value, which means 1 if the key is set, 0 if the key is not set, or null if the key 0 if the key is set to 0, and null if the key is not set. This makes it easier for you and much clearer to understand and to see which changes are required to be made within the registry. Yeah, and here are some more information. For example, if you run the script, you will notice that we output some of the points or some of the findings in different colors. We have white or gray in this case, which is an informational output, which means it's something which is good to know, but there is no action or nothing needed from your side to be changed or to be done. We also have a green output, which means the configuration is as expected. There is also no action from your side. As you can see here, we have a valid auth certificate set, or the Exchange Mitigation Service is enabled, or AMSI is also enabled. Then we have yellow. Yellow is something which should be addressed. It doesn't mean that it will cause any issue or security risk, but it's something that we recommend to adjust because the settings are outdated or probably maybe cause issues in the future. So we highlight this stuff in yellow. And we call out in red, for example, if we have a critical finding. So red is definitely a call to action, as you can see here in the screenshot. We highlight in red because there are some security vulnerabilities found on the server. It's required to run prepare domain or prepare all domains to close one of these security vulnerabilities. And the other finding here is to configure the download domain feature to address another vulnerability. So red is definitely something that should be changed in your configuration. Yeah, and definitely this server is at risk. So there is something you need to do. Okay, let's continue with the setup assistant. David, up to you.
Yep. So Setup Assist was actually designed back in 2020, I believe, where we just had a lot of people running into audit issues with setups cases and just didn't know how to troubleshoot. One of the big problems that we have with setup is you run into an issue, and if it's an issue with like prerequisites or actually running slash prepare AD, you'll actually get a bunch of random errors that aren't actually related to your issue, and you have to actually dig through the logs to understand what's going on. So we ended up creating this to help engineers and help customers go through and run setup. At this time, it's really only intended for CU updates, not necessarily SUs. It's something that SUs aren't, especially after the latest updates with SUs with having the double click to run to escalated to actually privilege mode, because we had a lot of issues regarding security updates where you just double click on it, it runs through, runs fine, except for it doesn't have the right permissions to go through and change some things in the server, and that ends up having all kinds of havoc on your environment because the configuration files aren't actually properly updated because of the elevation. After making those changes, SUs have been a little bit easier to troubleshoot and not having that additional privilege being set. It's intended to be run actually on the server itself that you're trying to run the setup on for an Exchange server specifically. Right now, it's also only really intended for internally in the environment. Edge servers are not quite fully there yet, but it has the ability to do some of the stuff. And it only does the latest CU. The reason is it's so hard to automate a script where we just want it to be as simple as possible for customers and engineers, where it just run the script with no additional parameters. And it's hard to build in logic to automatically detect and determine what CU are you actually trying to install on your server. So right now we just have it provided for the latest CU, and it's right now, I mean, only Exchange 2019 is even releasing CUs. So it makes it actually pretty easy right now for that. It goes through and does a list of prerequisite checks, whether it be .NET Framework, Visual C++, server being needed to be rebooted, IIS rewrite module, and some of those other things, because customers have been running the setup assist to determine if they are ready to actually run setup on their server, and using it as a prerequisite to do that, so they know that they're not going to run into potentially any known issues within their environment. It also goes through and checks common domain level issues. Again, one of the most common things that we have seen in the past has been regarding running setup, not being in the same domain as your schema admin or the same site, and you get a whole bunch of errors saying that you're not part of the domain admins group, not part of the MISA or the organization management group. And it detects this, and then it tells you where to run setup with slash prepare AD if you're not at the correct level for the latest CU. And also does some common local server issues where services might be disabled and the file is set that shows that. And then also like certain things with like Windows Firewall being disabled on the environment. We actually need to have that enabled in order to run firewall or add firewall rules to the server so Exchange can properly run. And then also, because of the way that we developed GitHub in our repository with the modular ability of all the scripts and functions, we were able to pull in the same logic that's actually within the setup log reviewer script, and it actually ends up running that at the end to determine if there's any known issues within the log itself that we can provide you assistance on. Otherwise, it will show that it can find anything and provide the error message if it's there. Otherwise, if it detects that it was a successful one, it will actually display that. And here's kind of the output that it will go through and show. At the end, you'll have a list of all the rules that were run through. Some of them are just warnings, like remote execution policy. It's best to have it set to unrestricted, I believe, but a lot of times remote sign still ends up working in most environments. So it's just a warning. Another thing is like Visual C++. That one mostly fails just because you don't have the latest one installed. It's not actually a requirement, but it's also just a good practice being on the latest and greatest for some of those dependencies. Oops. What did I do? So, and then inside of Setup Log Reviewer, this is actually reviewing the Exchange setup log. It's only designed again for CUs. SUs are way more complicated to try to actually review. And a lot of our cases that we get end up being for can't install the CUs, especially after the proxy logon issue that we had back in 2021, I believe it was, where we had a lot of customers calling in, didn't know how to go through and run set up for Exchange. They haven't done it in a while, and didn't realize that Exchange was in a child domain or a different site than the schema master, and then you get those odd error messages, and it just wouldn't work. So it actually will go through and detect all those stuff for you and provide how to run setup and where at in those certain scenarios. And it will detect over 20 plus known issues, specifically a lot of them regarding the ones that we commonly see often within cases that we get reported. Another big one is ended up being the MSI issues, where admins will go through and try to save on space and delete the installer cache at Windows installer. Which is a big no-no, because now you can't upgrade your Exchange server, because we require those old MSIs to go through and do the upgrades. So if those aren't there, we can't upgrade. So it actually goes through and checks the registry, checks the files to make sure that everything's there, and will report back if, or this actually is also done in Setup Assist as well. This is those same things, but it'll actually call this out in Setup Log Reviewer to run the Setup Assist to do those things to help determine what's going on. And also a lot of times arbitration mailboxes get removed, or the database that it was on gets deleted, and then you can't do setup because those databases aren't there, or they're not home to a proper mailbox database, and you just run into a lot of odd issues like that. And we'll go through and check and provide the action plan for some of those steps. And another common one is the deleted well-known objects, where the default groups that are created with for Exchange aren't there and ended up getting deleted and are pointed to a deleted container. That will cause setup to fail. And when you run the setup log review and you're running into some of those known issues, you'll get the error that's found within the last run of the setup log, and it'll actually provide you with options, or only if there's only one, it would provide you the steps to take in order to address that particular issue. And it even provides every single time, if this does not resolve your issue, please email extools feedback at Microsoft, because we want to know those things if it does not solve your issue, because we want to improve these things to help all the customers in the future to make things run smoother. And then another example here is of an output where that we see a lot of issues is customers are trying to install setup or install latest CU from PowerShell, and they forget to include the / for setup.exe. This causes an issue because PowerShell by default will go to the paths that are defined for all the executables first before the local directory. So by not providing the / you'll end up running from the bin directory of Exchange versus the current directory that you're at. And when you do that, the setup just doesn't run because it doesn't know how to properly do some of those things from bin. get weird errors like unable to find the some scripts and certain other things that we expect to be at a certain location. And one of the scripts that got created within the last couple years as well was Troubleshoot Monitor Search. This became um, or this was developed because of Big Funnel specifically. With Big Funnel, we have the ability to pull out your index status of individual messages because that's where the um, personal object index is actually stored at now. Instead of inside of a catalog database, it's actually stored on the message itself. So we're actually able to determine if you're not able to find certain items, whether or not it's indexed directly there. And that's extremely useful because a lot of times you just don't know if the reason why you're not finding a item is because of your search query or because of the item just not being indexed. By having this ability to pull that out really quickly, will tell you right away is if the issue is potentially with your query or something on the item is just not being indexed. Right now, this is only intended for Exchange 2019 going forward, and you're able to find the index of those messages, and you have to provide like the message subject or the document ID. Other possibilities might become in the future for how to collect that information based off the item that you want. But as of right now, it's just mainly the document ID or the message subject. And it pulls out some additional critical information to troubleshoot, like how many messages are actually indexed overall on the individual mailbox, what your current receive and max send size is set to on the mailbox, because in some environments, customers go through and set that value to 0 for both max send and receive size when an employee has left, and they're like a temporary employee contractor, and they come back and forth quite a few times. So they put them into the state, and if the messages aren't indexed already, they will never be indexed because because the value is set to 0, we can't modify that item anymore, is what it boils down to. And since we're storing the index on the message itself, it prevents that from occurring. And you also have the ability to get the stats on a mailbox server by providing dash server and then the server name, and then it will list out the percentages of your indexed number of items index on individual mailboxes. And we'll see an example of that here in a little bit. Here's how you go through and run the script. You provide the item subject, attachment, message name was the example in my lab that I did, and then mailbox identity provides some useful information, tells you what server it's on. Like there, you can kind of see the max send size. In this particular message, it has an index status of should not be indexed. Therefore, because it has that status, it means it doesn't have a POI set on it. If it doesn't have a POI set, the per object index, it will not ever be able to be found with search. And the only reason why the script is able to do it is because we're querying the actual database table for that item subject versus utilizing the index. This was an issue that we've been trying to track down for actually a long time, and we ended up finding the reasoning for this, or actually able to find the repro steps of Outlook in online mode has an attachment and the message was ended up forwarding. When that happens, we get into a weird state where we don't have all the properties needed to properly determine if the item should be indexed or not. So then it just drops it and determines that we should not be indexing this item. So that was ended up being fixed in C12. And unfortunately, the only way to resolve that issue is to upgrade to the latest CU and then move the mailbox, because there's no way to re-index the items that are in the state of should not be indexed. There's the public KB regarding that known issue. And then another common scenario that we have seen quite a bit is after a CU or SU upgrade, the services for search are no longer started. They're failing out. Something's not right. Admins don't tend to know this for a long period of time until end users call and complain, and then they find out, oh, hey, the services aren't starting to start them. Everything's good for a while. And then all of a sudden they realize that I'm not able to search for any messages between X and X date. And this is because after so many attempts of trying to index those items, we get into a permanent failure state, and then we will not try to re-index those items again until we add in a override. And the way that we know that it's the state is because we constantly have this indexing error message, failed to connect, skip adding POI, and it's in a permanent failure state. So again, it takes a long time to notice for admins if you're not paying attention, if you're not on that particular server that's having the issue. And then inside that KB article, unfortunately, it doesn't have a KB number. You have to actually type that out, the incomplete search results after installing an Exchange 2019 update. It will provide the override that you would need to go through and do that will include the permanent failure items in the retry feeder, and then it will actually retry those messages again. So you don't have to go through and move the mailboxes, which is good because we don't always want to have to be moving mailboxes. Here is what the view looks like for when you're running against the server. It provides the mailbox goods. It goes through and shows the number of index count, not indexed. The top mailbox is actually my discovery mailbox. That's why it has nothing there, because I haven't done any discovery or anything there. So it's at a -1. But all the other mailboxes, you can see it's at like a 74, 75%, which isn't ideal. Inside the service, they're actually recommended that 95%. So index state, and that's what they recommend to be at. And if you actually go through and look at further down, it will going through and displaying like the top 10 mailboxes. And inside here, we can see that it's not indexed status because of null for the error message. That to me just provides that search never even attempted to try to index this message, and therefore we just needed to go through and start the retry feeder. And you are able to do that with the start mailbox assistant, the identity of the mailbox, the assistant, and then you go through, rerun the get mailbox statistics command, and then you'll see after running that, you'll end up having 0 for the non-indexed items, and then all the items are now indexed. So it's a little bit rushed there at the end, but does anybody have any questions regarding any of the content that we have provided? Please go ahead and raise your hand or come off mute, or write it in the chat. Nobody? Lucas, do you have anything to add?
Nope, not from my
Did
side. I'm just
Will
checking
these be
the
rolled into?
chats.
So yes, everything that we're doing, we want to make sure that vNext will work with these scripts. That is going to be a key moving forward. These scripts are located on CSS Exchange, which you can get to by going to aka.ms/CSS Exchange. It'll prompt you to go into our GitHub page, or GitHub Docs page. And if you understand GitHub and know how to file issues, pull requests, there's a way at the top right of that page to click on GitHub, and it'll actually bring you to our full GitHub repository. We just had a lot of issues in the past with people trying to copy the script out from the web browser and then paste it into Notepad and then trying to run the script that way. It doesn't work that way because of the way the script is written.
And so if you have any feedback, feel free to drop us an email or to file an issue on GitHub itself. We are looking forward for your feedback to improve the scripts and to make them even better.
Yeah, the manageability troubleshooter is just a way to collect the logs that are regarding manageability, and then it goes through an automated process for how to review those logs. If you are running into issues with your box blue screening, there's an option specifically for that, and it just walks you through determining which probe is ended up failing that's causing the escalation to occur, and then the box to be blue screen. I think. Yeah, and that's one thing that we are aware of, that a lot of organizations are blocking GitHub. We're hoping that people can move past that, because GitHub is so nice to be part of a community and make those changes, submit your own pull requests, and then you can actually actively see what is being changed for your security team to review. I'm not sure how to release a script somewhere else currently. That I'm sure there's a way that we could probably do it within the build pipeline to also get the scripts released somewhere else. But then there is how do you make other people aware of that secondary location, considering all of our docs and everything are within the GitHub location. So that's something that I think Lucas and Nasser will need to look into to see how we can potentially do that on Microsoft.com.
Yeah, good feedback. Yeah.
All right. Adam, the reason why that we don't want to include them in EX scripts is because CUs only come out once every 6 months. The reason why GitHub it's there is we can release something within the same day, fix an issue or adding changes for a new issue, all right now, and then not having to wait for another CD release. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to move away from things being released inside of CUs and inside the EX scripts. Because of that reason, that's also why when extended protection was released, that's why we pushed for that to be done inside of GitHub. So that way, if there was changes that need to be made, we can do it on the fly. All right, so that is all the time we really have for now. We have to actually drop for another session. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. We'll try to also see if we can answer any more questions on the side. Keep that open, but thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for attending, and looking forward to see you in the upcoming sessions.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you.